I lost my dad, and my husband said we'd share his $2 million inheritance with his mom, shocked me. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
It started like any other ordinary day, but I had no idea my whole world was about to change. My dad had always been my anchor, my quiet strength. Losing him was like losing the ground beneath my feet. I remember waking up that morning with a strange heaviness in my chest, not knowing it was grief knocking before it even arrived. The phone call came too early. My husband's voice on the other end was soft, almost trembling. "Alec, your dad." He didn't finish the sentence. I already knew. When I got to my dad's house, everything felt unreal. The air was heavy. My mom's eyes were red, not from makeup, but from tears that refused to stop. His house felt smaller now, as if it knew he was gone, and shrank in mourning. There were photographs everywhere, pictures of birthdays, summer picnics, laughter frozen in time. I stood in his living room, my hand clutching the worn armrest of his chair, staring at the quiet, that chair, that voice, that man, and yet, something else was waiting. Something I couldn't name. That afternoon, after the funeral, my husband asked me to sit down. His tone was strange, serious, almost secretive. My chest tightened. I thought it was just grief talking, but then he said it. "We're going to share your dad's inheritance with my mom." I froze, my head turned toward him slowly, my mind refusing to process the words. $2 million, those weren't just numbers. They were my dad's life savings, years of sacrifice and hard work. And suddenly, they were being offered somewhere else, somewhere unexpected. I wanted to scream, to ask why, but the air felt heavy with something I couldn't breathe around. My husband didn't explain. He just looked at me, his eyes a mixture of guilt and determination. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I left that room feeling hollow, carrying a storm inside me. I couldn't understand. Why would he say such a thing? Why now, when we were already drowning in grief? The next few days were worse than I imagined. Every family gathering turned into whispers and glances. My friends started noticing I wasn't myself. Even my own voice sounded strange to me when I spoke. It was quieter, cracked by confusion. My mind kept replaying his words. "We're going to share the inheritance with my mom." They felt like a betrayal, but I didn't know if it was anger or sadness driving me. Maybe both. I began retracing everything. My dad had never spoken about a will. Not once. I had thought everything would naturally go to me. Maybe my brother, the way it always had. But now, suddenly, there was another hand in the equation. My husband, his family, his mom. I couldn't stop asking myself what I missed. Was this always planned? Was it something he had wanted all along? I tried to confront him, but every time I opened my mouth, the words felt stuck. His face would turn unreadable, like a door closing before I could even knock. That silence became unbearable. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, about promises, about knowing the truth and having it kept from you. One night, I sat alone in our living room, staring at my phone, the darkness pressing in around me. I remembered something my dad had said months ago, almost casually, about family and fairness, about how we should look after each other when times get hard. And I thought this wasn't about fairness. It felt like something else entirely, something deeper, something I wasn't supposed to find out yet. I began digging, quietly, carefully, afraid of what I might uncover. I talked to my dad's friends, his accountant, even his lawyer, but every answer seemed to lead to more questions. The inheritance was real. It was a sum of $2 million, but there was no record of any agreement with my husband's family. Nothing official, just a promise one my husband had made privately. And promises, I began to realize, could be broken without warning. It was then that I started feeling a strange mix of fear and resolve. Fear because I didn't know where this would lead. Resolve because I had to know the truth, not just for me, but for my dad. He had spent his life protecting us. Now, in his absence, I had to protect what he left behind. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the house silent except for the clock ticking. My thoughts were loud, circling faster and faster. I knew this was no longer just a family matter. This was something that could change everything: our marriage, my trust, my future. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the real story wasn't just about the $2 million. It was about a secret my husband had been carrying all along, and I had no idea how far he was willing to go to keep it hidden. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt louder, my own breathing, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the clock ticking in the dark. I kept replaying his words. We're going to share the inheritance with my mom. Like they were a code I hadn't cracked yet. I didn't know if it was shock or betrayal keeping me awake, but my mind refused to rest. Somewhere deep down, I knew this was no small matter. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I sat on the edge of our bed, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, trying to gather courage. I decided I had to confront him again, but differently this time. Not with anger, not with tears, but with questions. Quiet ones, sharp ones, questions that demanded answers. When he came into the kitchen, I was already sitting there, staring into my mug like it held the meaning of life. He noticed me instantly, the way someone notices a storm brewing. I didn't speak at first. I just looked at him. And finally, I said, "Why?" His face tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he sighed deeply and walked past me without a word. That silence hurt more than anything. It wasn't just the words he refused to say, it was the fact that he was hiding something, something heavy. I began to wonder if I had been blind all along, to trusting, to willing to believe we were on the same side. Now, doubt was seeping into every corner of my mind. I went back to my dad's house later that day. It felt wrong to be there without him, but I needed to be surrounded by his presence to find some clarity. I wandered through the rooms he had lived in, touching objects without thinking, his old coffee mug, the sweater he always wore in winter, the photos on the wall. Everything was the same, yet nothing felt right. In his study, I found something strange, a small envelope hidden behind his desk drawer. It wasn't addressed to me, and there was no note, just his handwriting on the seal. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, filled with numbers, names, and something that looked like a promise. My heart raced. Was this what my husband knew about? Was this the secret? I couldn't make sense of it yet, but one thing became clear. My husband's words weren't random. They were connected to something my dad left behind. And it wasn't just money, it was something much deeper. That night, I decided I couldn't let it go. I began keeping a journal, writing down every conversation, every suspicion, every detail that didn't make sense. I started looking into my husband's past, his family, his relationships, and the more I dug, the more I realized I was stepping into something dangerous, something I wasn't sure I could get out of. A few days later, my husband came home with a calmness that unsettled me. He didn't mention the envelope, didn't ask if I had looked into it, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew I was searching. I knew then that this wasn't going to end quietly. One evening, I found him in the living room, staring at his phone with a seriousness I had never seen before. I tried to speak, but he cut me off with a single word: later. That word felt heavy, like a warning I couldn't ignore. The following week, strange things started happening. Calls that went unanswered, doors left unlocked, whispers in the hallway when I was sure I was alone. My husband's behavior shifted. Small things at first, avoiding eye contact, late nights without explanation. But then it became bigger. He started disappearing for hours, coming home with a guarded look. I began to fear, not just for myself, but for the truth. What was he hiding, and why was it worth so much secrecy? My heart ached with suspicion, and each night, I fell asleep clutching my phone, waiting for a message, a clue, anything that could explain what was happening. Then, one night, I overheard a conversation. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was in the kitchen, pouring tea, when I heard him talking on the phone. His voice was low, urgent. The words were clear enough to freeze me in place. "It's done. She doesn't suspect yet. We can't let her find out." My blood ran cold. My mind raced. Who was he talking to? What did he mean by "it's done"? And how long had this been going on without me knowing? That moment changed everything. I no longer felt like I was just a wife. I felt like an intruder in my own life, someone living in a story I had no control over. The trust I had built, the life I thought we shared, it was all slipping away. I knew I had to find answers, but I also knew that the deeper I dug, the darker the truth would get. And somehow, I had a feeling that this wasn't just about my dad's inheritance anymore. It was about something much bigger, something dangerous. As I lay in bed that night, my phone buzzing softly beside me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stop. I would uncover the secret, no matter what it cost me, because whatever was hidden behind that $2 million promise, it was a secret that could destroy everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and the man I married. And deep down, I knew there was no turning back. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my chest so heavy it felt like it would never loosen. My phone still lay where I'd left it last night, buzzing quietly in the dark. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. No new messages, no calls, just silence. But that silence was louder than anything else I'd ever heard. I got up and moved through the house, as if I were in a dream. Every step felt heavier, as though I were walking deeper into a truth I wasn't ready for. Breakfast was cold by the time I sat down. I didn't eat. I just sat there, staring at the steam rising from my untouched coffee. The thought kept coming back, his voice on the phone, the words that cut through me like a blade. "It's done. She doesn't suspect yet." That phrase haunted me all day. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept circling back to him, to my dad's envelope, to every moment we'd shared in the past months. Was my whole life a lie? I couldn't shake the suspicion that everything I thought I knew about him, about us, was unraveling. Later that afternoon, I decided to confront him. I wanted answers, but when I walked into the living room, he wasn't there. The house felt empty. My chest tightened again. I began pacing, the floor creaking beneath my feet. I glanced at the clock. He had said he was working late, but something told me that wasn't the whole truth. My phone rang suddenly. His name flashed on the screen, but the call came from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was low, almost unrecognizable. "Don't look into it. Stop now. You don't know what you're getting into." Then the line went dead. My hand trembled as I put down the phone. Who had called me? Why? The warning. My stomach churned with fear and confusion. This was no longer just about an inheritance, it was something much bigger, something dangerous. And somehow, I was right in the middle of it. I spent the rest of the evening going through the envelope my father had left. Every piece of paper, every note, every name. There was a pattern, something hidden beneath the words. I didn't know how to describe it, but I knew instinctively it was the key to everything. And the more I studied it, the more I realized I couldn't ignore it. That night, I stayed awake again, scribbling notes in my journal, connecting dots that seemed impossible. My mind was spinning, but I couldn't stop. Somewhere deep inside me, I knew this was a turning point. Whatever truth I uncovered next would change my life forever. And then it happened. A knock at the door, soft but deliberate, broke the silence. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze. My breath caught. I wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, I walked toward the door. Another knock, this time sharper. I stepped closer, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. Through the peephole, I saw nothing, just the shadow of someone standing there, watching. My heart raced. I opened the door, a crack. No one was there, just the quiet night and a faint breeze brushing against my skin. Then I noticed something on the doorstep, a folded piece of paper. I picked it up, my fingers shaking. No handwriting, just one word scrawled in bold letters: stop. The paper slipped from my hand as I stepped back. My mind was a storm of fear and questions. Who was warning me, and why? Was this connected to my husband, to my father's secret, to the envelope? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed in bed, clutching that paper, staring at the ceiling as shadows danced on the walls. I felt trapped in a story I couldn't escape. Every noise, every whisper in the dark made me jump. My world had shifted. I was no longer just living, it was as if I was being pulled into something far bigger than myself, something I wasn't sure I could survive. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't wait for answers to come to me. I had to find them, no matter the risk, no matter what I might lose. I told myself that even if the truth broke me apart, I had to see it. I had to know. I began retracing every moment from the past month, every conversation, every glance, every unexplained action. My days became filled with searching, and my nights with restless anxiety, and slowly, a pattern began to emerge. It wasn't just about the inheritance, it was about control, about power, about something someone was willing to kill to protect. I didn't tell him what I was doing. I couldn't. I had learned by now that some truths had to be uncovered in silence, but every step I took felt heavier, as though the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. One night, I followed him, quietly, from a distance. He went somewhere I hadn't expected, somewhere hidden, a house on the edge of town, lit dimly inside. My breath caught in my throat as I watched him enter, and then, the door shut behind him. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, unsure whether to turn back or step closer. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but something inside me told me I had to know. I had to see what was happening inside. That night, I realized I was no longer just looking for answers. I was in the middle of a storm I couldn't walk away from. And I knew there was no turning back now. The air was colder that night than I remembered. My breath came in shaky clouds as I stayed hidden in the shadows, watching the house at the edge of town. The faint glow of a light through the curtains told me someone was inside. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. But I couldn't turn back. I had to know. I edged closer, every step careful and quiet, my sneakers barely making a sound against the gravel path. The closer I got, the heavier the silence became. There was something about that house, something that didn't belong to the ordinary world. It felt like stepping into someone else's secret. I pressed myself against a tree near the window, trying to see inside. Through the glass, shadows moved. A deep conversation echoed, low voices, tense, urgent. I couldn't make out every word, but one name kept being repeated. My name, Alec Rose. My stomach dropped. My mind screamed to run, but I was frozen. Then, I saw him, my husband, and beside him, my father's lawyer. They were looking at something spread across a table. Papers, photographs, documents. My breath caught. Those were the same papers I'd been studying in the envelope. Suddenly, he looked toward the window. My breath stopped. Did he see me? My pulse raced. I ducked instinctively, but the sound of my foot crunching a tiny stone betrayed me. The room went silent. I felt eyes on me. Then the door opened. A figure stepped out. Not my husband, not the lawyer, but someone else. Someone tall, dressed in black. They held a phone in their hand, and their face was hidden in shadow. My chest tightened. My mind was screaming, "Run!" But before I could move, they spoke. "You shouldn't be here, Alec. You don't understand what's at stake." The voice froze me to the spot. How did they know my name? I stepped back, heart pounding. "What's at stake?" I whispered, more to myself than to them. The figure didn't answer. Instead, they turned toward the house. My husband's voice came through the open door, again urgent. "If she finds out, everything collapses. You know that." That was enough for me. My world felt like it was breaking apart. My hands shook as I stepped away from the window. My instincts screamed danger, but my mind couldn't stop racing. Why would they hide this from me? And what was my father's inheritance really about? I ran then, without looking back, heart pounding louder than my footsteps. The cold night air cut through me, but I kept going. When I reached home, I locked every door, my body trembling. My thoughts were spinning. Everything I had trusted was now a question mark. My life felt like it was no longer mine. That night, sleep didn't come. I kept turning over the moment I'd witnessed. I could still hear the voices, still see the shadowy figure. I was left with questions I couldn't answer. The more I thought, the more it became clear my father's inheritance wasn't just money. It was something dangerous, something people would kill to protect. I had been drawn into something bigger than I could have imagined, and deep down, I knew I had to face it. The next day, I started digging deeper. I went through every letter, every note, every scrap of paper my father had left. My hands shook as I pieced things together. There were names, bank accounts, transactions, all pointing to something massive, something hidden. As I sat in my room late that night, I realized I wasn't just uncovering secrets. I was uncovering a web of lies, betrayal, and danger. And the closer I got to the truth, the more I felt its weight pressing down on me. Then I found something, a single document that made my breath catch, my father's handwriting, and in bold letters, a single sentence: "If anything happens to me, she must know the truth." I sat there staring at it for hours, my mind reeling. Who was she? My heart told me it was me. But what truth, and why had my husband kept it from me? That night, I made my choice. I wouldn't stop, no matter how dangerous it became, no matter how high the cost. I was already in this storm, and there was no turning back. I didn't know yet that the moment I decided to keep going was the moment my life would change forever, because the truth I was chasing would break me, and perhaps destroy everything I loved. The next morning felt heavy, like the air itself knew something had shifted. I woke before sunrise, my mind still tangled in the memory of the night before. The shadowy figure, the hushed voices, my father's warning. Every sound in the quiet house made me jump. My hands felt clammy as I pulled the document close, rereading the words again and again. If anything happens to me, she must know the truth. I knew I couldn't ignore it, but I also knew that the closer I got to that truth, the more dangerous my path would become. My father hadn't written those words lightly. He had been protecting something so important that people were willing to lie, hide, and fight over it. And now, Somehow, I was the keeper of it. That afternoon, I went back to the house, the one I had fled from the night before. I told myself it was for answers, but deep down, I feared what I might find. My heart beat fast as I approached the door. Every instinct screamed danger, but I knew this was the only way forward. Inside, silence greeted me. The air smelled faintly of old paper and something sharp. My footsteps echoed as I moved toward the table where I had seen the documents the night before. They were gone. Every scrap, every photo, every paper vanished. Then, I heard a soft noise behind me. I turned quickly. It was my husband. His eyes were not the ones I had married. They were guarded, unreadable, almost cold. "Alec," he said softly, "you weren't supposed to come here." "I had to," I whispered. "I need answers." My voice shook, though I tried to hide it. "What's happening? Why did you hide this from me?" He stepped closer, his face tense. "Because knowing the truth will change everything. You have no idea what you're walking into." His words made my chest tighten. "Try me," I said. He looked at me for what felt like forever. Then, finally he spoke. "Your father, he found something worth millions. But it's not just money. It's a secret that powerful people will kill to protect. That inheritance, it wasn't just left to us. It was a message, a warning." The world shifted in that moment. Everything I had believed about my father, about my husband, about my life, it felt like it was crumbling into dust. I could feel tears forming, not just for the fear, but for the betrayal. "What is it?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, worn envelope. "This is everything," he said quietly. "But once you open it, there's no going back." I took the envelope, my hands trembling. The weight of it was heavier than I expected, heavier than the $2 million inheritance my father had left. It was the weight of truth, danger, and a life I no longer recognized as my own. I stepped back, my heart pounding. "What happens now?" He looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. "Now, we survive together, but only if we're careful." As I stood there, holding the envelope, I realized something terrifying. This was no longer just my father's story. This was mine, my husband's, and whoever else was out there watching this was a story they would do anything to stop. The night fell again, heavy and silent, but inside me, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by determination. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't hide. I would face whatever truth lay in that envelope. Because I had no choice. And deep down, I knew the moment I opened it, my life would never be the same again. That as I walked into the darkness that night, envelope clutched tight in my hand, I whispered to myself, "This is the truth my father wanted me to find, and I will see it through." But somewhere deep inside, I wondered, when the truth comes, will I be ready for it? And more importantly, will I still want to know it?